verse from Jeremiah 29 that appears in the bulletin every week had become this church's mantra and is also a personal guidance for me. So as we move on with a new verse from Isaiah, let's never forget the first verse. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope in the future. It would have been 12 years in August that my husband Bob and I moved out to Pewaukee from Wauwatosa. On those Sunday mornings when we went to church, we would drive back to Wauwatosa to attend the Congregational church there. Usually on the drive in, my husband would comment how nice it would be to have a Congregational church out in our area. I always replied, yes, it would be nice if there was a Congregational church out here, but that's not the case, so we'll continue to drive back to Wauwatosa. I often wondered if that was one of those be careful what you wish for moments. It wasn't too long after that we received a letter from Dick and Marilyn B. inquiring if there was any interest in starting a new Congregational church, possibly in the Pewaukee area. Well, that certainly piqued our interest, and maybe it was an answer to wishing for a shorter drive to church. But start a new church? We didn't know anything about starting a new church. How do you do it? Was there a new start a new church kit? Where do you begin? How do you find a pastor? How do you fund a new church? The questions just kept popping up. But we were curious, and we figured Dick and Marilyn must know what they're doing. There are many fact-finding and organizational meetings that took place, finally culminating in a kickoff meeting at the Radisson Hotel in Wauwatosa, where we all took a leap of faith and declared our intentions to form a new church and call a pastor to lead us into this unknown territory, much like with Moses leading the people out of Egypt. But talk about a leap of faith. Lonnie took a giant leap of faith, along with his family, when he accepted our call, for which we will always be grateful. We started out by congregating in people's living rooms for church services, and then when that became too cumbersome, we moved on to the Capitol Theater. Those were the days. Setup started at 7 a.m. as we had to set up, hold a church service, and store things away behind the screen before the first movie showings of the day. Everything had to be draped up from behind the movie screen. The coffee cart, large Rubbermaid containers full of toys from the nursery area, Sunday school supplies, music and sound equipment, a makeshift altar, everything we needed to transform Capitol Theater into Fox River Congregational Church for a few hours on a Sunday morning. I remember wrestling with that huge white vinyl banner that proclaimed us to be Fox River Congregational Church. It wasn't ideal by any stretch of imagination, but I believe it was that synergy and camaraderie that formed the foundation for the past 10 years. I thought we'd be in the cinema for years. Little did I know that there were plans in the works to either demolish the theater or redevelop it. About the same time, there was talk that we would be looking for land to build a church. Again, I thought, how can this be? We're such a small congregation to do anything of this magnitude. I'm sure the Lord wasn't too happy with me. Ye of little faith. He should have reminded me of the story about the mustard seed. At the time, I was working with my husband, and we received the invitation to look at a particular piece of property that was being considered as a possible purchase and location for the church. It was a cold, windy, and damp day that we looked at the property. My husband and I left the office a few hours in order to view the property. We toured the building that would eventually become the parsonage. What I didn't know is that we were going to walk the entire perimeter of the property, which included a little bit more land than what we currently have. Lessons learned. Do not wear heels when looking at a church property. It was hard to believe that we had been together for 10 years. I don't know where the time has gone. There have been weddings, baptisms, funerals, Christmas pageants, Christmas dinners, ordinations, and celebrations. We have all been on this journey, but our perceptions have been different. The church has been with me through many joys and some sorrows. The baptisms of 6 of our grandchildren, 5 of them in the theater. Our last granddaughter was baptized here at church. Our first granddaughter was baptized by Lonnie at the Congregational Church in Wauwatosa. My husband and I renewed our 40th renewed our vows on our 40th wedding anniversary in February 2007. What a blessing that was. My mother-in-law's funeral in 2007, my husband's funeral in 2009, and now the upcoming 10th anniversary. This church has been here for me through smiles and tears. I guess you could say my husband's and my prayers have been answered. We have a new church practically in our backyard, and both of our daughters, Barbara and Katie, and their families are members here. We have been blessed. For some time after my husband passed away, I was considering leaving Fox River and going to another church. Sunday mornings were just too difficult for me. I couldn't get through a service without crying. I couldn't attend different activities. It was just too painful. I am getting better, but I have a ways to go yet. I came to realize that there are just some things you cannot run away from. Our family's history is woven into the fabric of this church's history. So why not be embraced by the love of this community that we call Fox River Congregational Church? I pray that this tapestry will be woven into the history of many more families as we continue the journey into the next 10 years. Thank you. And now let me continue our story.
Good morning. Good morning. Happy Mother's Day to all you mothers. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. It is fitting that my mom and I are standing up here together, not only because it is Mother's Day, but because we embarked on this spiritual journey together about 20 years ago. It was shortly after I graduated from college, and I was forced to consider the realities of my future, finding a job, getting married, buying a home, having children, but this also included exploring my faith and my relationship with God. At the time, we were not regular churchgoers. I like to say I was homeschooled in religion because both my parents were faith-driven, and I hold true to the beliefs, morals, and values they instilled in me. My dad was well-versed in the Bible, partially because he had a deep appreciation, respect, and fascination with history, but also because he was a spiritual man with a great love for God. My mom and I began attending services at First Church in Wauwatosa and became members. A few years later, I was engaged to be married and excitedly planning my wedding. Until I learned that the interim minister, who I'd grown fond of, would not be able to marry us because the congregation would be receiving a new minister. I was a little apprehensive of the idea of someone who really had no knowledge of us joining us together in holy matrimony. However, my first meeting with Lonnie allayed any fears I had. Lonnie married us in the summer of 1995 and baptized our first daughter, Megan, at First Church. I found his messages so poignant and inspirational. I felt as though when Lonnie delivered his sermons, it was as if he was speaking directly to me. So when we received the letter from Dick and Marilyn, there was no doubt in my mind that where he may lead, I'll follow. Our only hesitation was that we were a young family, a growing family, and we knew that building a new church would require a substantial commitment. However, taking on this new venture wasn't too daunting when it became a family affair. My mom and dad decided to jump in with both feet, and my sister and her family would soon follow. Shortly after moving into the theater for services, our second daughter, Grace, was born. And being a young family, I quickly became acquainted with the other young mothers, all of whom had babies the same age as Grace. Gina Bagos, Carolyn Hitzman, Erica Zeiser, and I got to know each other primarily by crawling around with our little ones on the soda-saturated carpeting in the lobby of the theater. So in those earlier times, I spent a lot of time in our makeshift nursery. We formed a mom's group to allow our children to play together, as well as to offer support to one another. I believe it was during these times that the foundation was set for lasting relationships with an incredible group of women. It was also during these times that I realized it did not matter where we worshiped, because our foundation was already built by the devotion, dedication, and love of God set forth by this group of people who I'm so proud to call my church family. John chapter 4, verse 20 through 24 reads, "Yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in spirit and in truth." And as we find in Acts chapter 7, verse 48, the Most High does not dwell in temples made with hands. While there were some inconveniences associated with worshiping in the theater, it was uplifting to see everyone work together toward a common goal. My only real complaint was coming home with sticky feet and my clothes smelling like popcorn oil. The kids loved it, though, because they got to go to the theater every Sunday and have popcorn. Being that they were very little, they came to believe that every time we saw a movie theater, it was a church. In 2004, our third daughter, Paige, was born. She was our second child baptized in the theater. At that time, I was part of the Christian Education Committee. Regardless of our limited resources and our less than ideal surroundings, once again our church family came together to ensure that our children received the best possible Christian education. Nastasia Richardson was Megan's first Sunday school teacher and would remain her teacher for the next 3 years. She was the only one who was successful at breaking through Megan's shell. Believe it or not, my oldest daughter, who now enthusiastically volunteers to be song leader every Sunday, was extremely shy, but Nastasia was so patient and caring and mature beyond her years that soon Megan couldn't wait to come to church. While I could go on about countless Sunday school stories, the fact is my children have spent their entire lives growing spiritually and learning God's Word through people who have devoted all of their time and talent to enriching the lives of our children. In 2007, we came full circle as our fourth daughter, Aubrey, was baptized here in our new church home. Lonnie and her church family have seen us through many joys, yet many sorrows. So as you can see, this church has been a large part of our family history. I feel so blessed to have been part of its beginning and look forward to its continued growth. While there have been challenging times along this journey, we must remember a church is just not a beautiful place to worship. A church is the people who make worship a beautiful place. Thank you.